Well, with me is Matt Bradley. He's the Middle East correspondent for the Wall Street Journal and has visited Sinjar city. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's difficult, really. I mean, I was there last year, just on the outskirts, and you were there recently, to forget those images of people fleeing Mount Sinjar.
That's right. I mean, when I was there rather recently in March, there were no civilians. There were still some Yazidis who were still on the top of Mount Sinjar, but it was quite a different sort of conflict, and one that we're kind of seeing coming up today, one that puts at play more of the inter-Kurdish rivalries rather than the fight between Yazidi civilians and Islamic State militants, which is what you saw when you were there last year. Now it's really, there really aren't any civilians in the area. They've all been evacuated. There are just a few, as I mentioned, on the top of Mount Sinjar. But now it's really just a raw fight between different forces and a lot of conflict amongst the different types of Kurds, amongst Yazidis, between Kurdish Yazidis and Muslim Kurds, and it's quite a complicated situation at play.
Indeed, it's sort of a complicated part of the world, but the Kurds are now desperate, the Peshmerga, to retake Sinjar, and they've now put about 7,500 troops there to get it back? That's
what we understand, and a lot of it is backed by coalition forces, airstrikes that have been going on all night. And a lot of these forces have been mustering north of Sinjar Mountain in Dohuk. And the problem is a lot of the rivalries amongst the different Kurdish factions, which I just mentioned, has delayed this operation. And that's given time for Islamic State to bolster their forces in Sinjar city. Now remember, this fight has been going on for about a year at the base of Sinjar Mountain. So there's been a lot of forces at play, and Islamic State is likely to put up quite a bit of a fight. Even though they only have about 700 fighters in the city, they're still going to do what they've done throughout Iraq, which is defend themselves by putting in booby-trapped homes, setting up improvised explosive devices throughout the city, and really making it difficult for any coalition-aligned fighters, especially the Peshmerga and these Yazidi militiamen, to take back the city. So that's going to mean a block-by-block fight with booby-trapped homes and streets, and it's going to really be, it could be quite an ordeal.
Do you think the Kurdish and the forces, the Peshmerga, are capable of taking them back? I mean, I was on the front line with them last year, and I mean, really, it didn't feel like an organized military. And they're up against, you know, ISIS, who are very ruthless and capable.
Yes, well, it is an organized military as far as militaries in the region go, and that's the problem. We're talking about militia fighters throughout the region, including some of the Iranian-backed Shiite militias and the rest of Iraq. The bar is set very low, and as far as U.S. or coalition partners on the ground in Iraq go, the Peshmerga are some of the best. So while they don't seem particularly well-armed, while they don't seem particularly professional or well-trained, they really are some of the best fighters fighting against Islamic State today.
But they don't have the right equipment, or do they now?
They've been bolstered with some equipment from the United States, but not nearly, and from the coalition, but not nearly enough to go against Islamic State. And again, one of the things that they have, but that they're really lacking in any serious numbers, are the kind of equipment that sappers would use in order to get rid of some of these improvised explosive devices. And that's been the pattern that Islamic State has set throughout Iraq in places like Ramadi and Tikrit and Beji, which was just a couple of weeks ago. They've really set a precedent whereby they make everyone fight for yard by yard against not their own fighters, but against these landmines and improvised explosive devices, and that's what makes it so hard.
Just briefly, why is Mount Sinjar so significant?
It's not significant in itself, and this is why it's a symbolic victory. Because of the leaders of the Kurdish region, Masoud Barzani is really trying to take back some of the shame that happened last year when you were there, when the KDP, his ruling party, was accused of abandoning the Yazidis on top of Sinjar Mountain. So he's in the middle of a political crisis right now. He's fighting for his political life in the same way that the Peshmerga are fighting against Islamic State. That's the parallel drama that's going on here. So he needs this victory, and his Peshmerga fighters need this victory in order to prove to the world, the coalition, that they're capable of fighting against Islamic State, but also to prove to the Kurdish people that they deserve to be in power. So that's why it's a very symbolic victory for him. But it's also important because of this road that leads from Raqqa, which is the Islamic State capital in Syria, to Mosul.
Yeah.
So that could be a decisive strategic victory, but not really nearly as big as the symbolic victory they're hoping for.
Matt, we'll have to leave it there, but as you say, a very complex conflict indeed. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks very much.